Hey everybody, this is Brendan, and I am about to run a 5 game league on Magic Online. And I've made some changes to my list, and I'm just really testing out some cards. The Some of the main differences are Keldon Marauders over Eidolon of the Great Revel. Because Keldon Marauders deals 2 damage when it enters the battlefield. Um, well, 1 damage when it comes in, and then another damage when it leaves. So it's the same thing as my opponent triggering the Eidolon. Let's say they bolt it, they take 2 damage. Or they Abrupt Decay it, they take 2 damage. The same thing here is true with Keldon Marauders. If they bolt it or they Abrupt Decay it, they take 2 damage. However, Keldon Marauders has a 3/3 body instead of a 2/2, and can attack through many of the things that people are playing today. Things like Thalia, While in the Coddle, all sorts of little things that this guy can attack into and not be scared of it. Um, and the fact that I can have this guy in play and it's not going to hurt me to cast my spells, because typically when I have an Eidolon in play, I'm going to end up casting more spells into the Eidolon than my opponent. So by making this minor switch, I'm testing it out to see uh, if this card is good. Now, obviously, Eidolon is an auto win against several decks like Storm. Um, it's also very good against Infect. But I really want to see how Marauders does, and since I'm testing for the PT, I'm very willing to take a chance on these cards. Too often times people just play the cards that they see everybody else playing, and I hate to fall into that trap myself. This could be a really good card, and I want to see it in action. Another card is Grim Lavamancer, and right now I have 4 in my main deck. A lot of people will run 2, sometimes even 1. I'm running the full 4 because I want to see how good they are. Now, I happen to be a big fan of Grim Lavamancer, and so the idea of playing 4 is fine with me, because the first one always dies immediately, and having a second one is perfectly fine, because then it's going to have fuel because the first one died. But it's just a very good ability to have. Grim Lavamancer is one of the best red creatures ever printed. I have removed the Stomping Ground from my main deck, mostly because I found myself sideboarding it out all the time. Basically, anywhere I wasn't boarding in Destructive Revelry, I was boarding out Stomping Ground. So I felt like I had a dead card in my main deck. So I've cut the Stomping Ground, and obviously I've cut green as well. You can look at my sideboard here. I have essentially replaced the Destructive Revelries with 4 Smash to Smithereens. It does do 1 additional damage, and it makes my mana a lot simpler than having to fetch green and white in games 2 and 3. That's something I'm trying to avoid at all costs, is having to ever fetch for 2 splash colors. I'm still keeping the main cards of my sideboard that are powerful. Path to Exile is extremely powerful. Skullcrack is very good. Deflecting Palm has potential to be a blowout. So, in these matchups where I can't kill enchantments, because I don't have Destructive Revelry. For instance, against Boggles, Deflecting Palm will do a lot of work for me in a matchup like that. So because I have no Revelries, I upped my palms all the way to 4 to give me a chance at beating a deck like Boggles. Another deck that is hurt by not having Revelry is Infect. And so having a palm for the Infect decks is also very good, turning their pump spells against them. And with a lot of the Infect players moving to green-black, Palm becomes necessary in order to overcome a Phyrexian Crusader, because I can't path it, I can't bolt it. Destructive Revelry is completely useless against the black-green version. I don't even think that they run Spellskite. It's only good for Inkmoth Nexus. So Deflecting Palm gives me the out I need against against a green-black Infect deck. So the other thing here is, against Affinity, Smash is strictly better than Revelry against Affinity. It's just better, easier on the mana, and 1 additional damage. It's just simply better. However, Palm is also quite good against Affinity. And so, every time they cranial plating something up, or sacrifice a Ravager to put a lot of counters on something, which happens all the time, Palm can just be the game breaker against them. The other matchups where having Revelry could matter is like Amulet Bloom and Tron. Well, against Tron, Smash is strictly better than Revelry. However, against Amulet, they might have a Leyline of Sanctity. Now, I don't board in Revelry against Amulet Bloom anyway, because killing Amulet doesn't do anything, because they oftentimes hold it the turn that they're going to have an explosive turn with their lands. So they will hold an Amulet and then cast it on the turn that they intend to go off, which means that you would be stuck holding up 2 mana for Revelry the whole time, and I'm not going to do that. Revelry does kill Leyline of Sanctity, however, they only play 3, and it's a chance I am willing to take that they don't get it in the opening hand, but if they do get it in the opening hand, I'm not just dead to it, because I have 4 Deflecting Palms, and when they attack me with an 8/6 Vigilant Primeval Titan, the plan here is to palm it, and that gets through a Leyline of Sanctity. Keldon Marauders is less good against Leyline of Sanctity, because I have to deal the 2 damage to myself when I cast Marauders, and attacking for 3 is mildly acceptable. However, then it just turned into basically like a Psionic Blast, but a worse version of Psionic Blast, because it dealt me 2 and my opponent 3. Eidolon is better against Leyline of Sanctity, but there really aren't a lot of Leyline of Sanctities running around. And if the Amulet deck is harmed because of Summer Bloom being banned, then that's even less Leylines that I have to worry about. There's really not very many decks that run Leyline. So I don't really even consider that a big deal to have a poor deck versus Leyline, because just there aren't many people running Leyline. I know decks like Soul Sisters runs it, but I've never really had a problem with that matchup, and it's not a very common matchup. So I'm running the full 4 Deflecting Palm 2 Skull Cracks for any decks that are trying to gain life. Path is my twin matchup card. Smash, obviously, and Searing Blaze in case I go up against a deck like Zoo, Soul Sisters, obviously. Any deck like that, I can board in Searing Blaze to give me that little bit extra power level. Now you'll notice I don't have any core Firewalkers in my sideboard. Now, the reason for that is because I'm testing these cards. I already know what Firewalker can do. I'm already a big fan of Firewalker. However, I wanted to have a full 4 of these 3 cards so I can test just how good they are. Really, I'm just testing Deflecting Palm as a 4 of. So I'm just going with no core Firewalkers, just because I already know about that card. But the other ones here, I'm just basically trying to test their numbers, which ones need to be a 4 of. If I'm running 4 Deflecting Palm, I might not need 4 Smashes, because I board these in against Drawn and Affinity, the 2 matchups I'm boarding in Smash. So, these palms could take the place of some number of Smash to Smithereens. If Stoneforge Mystic gets unbanned, then I'm going to want the full 4 Smashes. So, interesting point though, Deflecting Palm is decent against Stoneforge Mystic too, because if they get a sword like War and Peace, or Fire and Ice, that gives their guy pro red, I can Deflecting Palm, prevent the damage, do, some number of damage to their face, and prevent the triggers on the sword. Also, it can prevent the 4 damage from the Batterskull token, the Germ token, and deal them 4 damage. So it's like, prevent you from gaining 4 life, and do 4 damage to your face. So, Deflecting Palm might be playable against a Stoneforge Mystic deck. It's hard to test against Stoneforge Mystic when it's not legal. So anyway, this is the list. I'm going to run it and see which of these cards have the best impact, and if I really can get away with not running Revelry. That's the big question. Can I not play green? Because Revelry 9 times out of 10 is killing an artifact. Can I get away with not having enchantment removal for Daybreak Coronet and Leyline of Sanctity? Is basically the only question I'm asking here. Can Palm overcome the lack of Revelry against a deck like Boggles, which is not a very popular deck? So it's not like I'm very worried about Boggles, but the question is, Leyline of Sanctity and that sort of thing. I really don't think I'm going to be missing that much by not having Revelry. Obviously, Revelry also helps against Splinter Twin, but the problem was that, you're using Revelry on a Spellskite, you're using they tap down your Stomping Ground with the Deceiver Exarch. Revelry's not all that good against Twin. So, at least in my experience. So, I've been boarding in fewer and fewer Revelries against Twin, to the point where I board in 2 Revelries, just because they're very poor, and I don't like the card against them. It's a little too defensive and situational, and it's very easily unable to cast it because oftentimes, they'll Tech Edge your Stomping Ground and cast a Deceiver, and your Destructive Revelry is just a dead card. So, anyway. Here's the list I'm going to run, and I hope you guys get some sort of benefit out of testing these cards as much as I do.